So let's jump in then. First question we have is for Mike. Besides the obvious of making money, Mike, what qualities do you look for in a demand source, and how do you go about evaluating them?
Well, I mean, we always want to make sure we're filling our inventory with strong brands, strong advertisers. We want a partner who's willing to work with us on an ongoing basis. I think those are it's no different than dealing with your direct agencies, right? You want to make sure that you're keeping strong brands and making sure that your users are not getting offended by anything. So, we've worked with partners in the past, not Millennial, but they'll slip in ads that we don't always approve, so there's a big trust factor. So I think those are some of the things that we always look for with our partners, just to make sure our users, you don't want to lose users over that.
So WeatherBug has a fairly robust monetization team, obviously. Next question for Ben. You have a little bit smaller team or smaller operation than WeatherBug. How many demand sources do you find that you can deal with? How many are enough? And how do you sort of balance that fill, eCPM?
So we used to have a lot more than we do now. That's absolute fact. So, and to call it, it's still a patchwork quilt, to say the least. But there used to be probably, at one time I probably had 3 times as many demand sources as we have now. And we've been able to, partially through people acquiring other companies, and partially through us just whittling down who we're willing to work with. We have probably a lot fewer startups that we're working with nowadays, and a lot more, exchanges, for one thing. So, in terms of balancing fill and eCPM, we're almost entirely focused on eCPM. We can fill 100% if we want to, and 8 times no problem. So we, just try to, take partners, even if they're filling at, 5 or 10%. We have specific, deals in place where we have certain partners who don't fill very much, but they pay a great deal. So we'll work with them, try to get a direct integration in place where we can give them a look, and what they're giving us for that is, very, very fast response time, so that we can just go down the waterfall.
So then Brooke, once you've got a partner evaluated and you've got them in the door, can you take us sort of an inside of your operation of how do you continuously evaluate that partner and how they're doing, and whether you're going to continue business with them or grow them within your strategy?
So I'd say a couple things on that. One, we test them across all of our different categories of apps, because we have several. I have a large portfolio that spans several different categories. And then we are constantly trying to profile all of our ad networks and exchanges in terms of what ad units they perform well on, what verticals they perform well in, what countries they perform well in. And then we update that at least quarterly. And then we also do our own analysis on, even if they tell us that they're strong in one vertical, where do we actually see them perform well? And we share that information back with them, much in the form of a scorecard.
So and Ben, so you got, I think, a different and very valuable perspective here than the other 3 panelists, of having seen how developers' strategies play out through your ad platform. What can you offer the crowd in terms of mistakes you've seen, and best practices as far as their strategy goes?
Yeah, I think I'd echo kind of what Greg from Pinger and some of the other folks up here have already said, and that instinctively it seems like more demand sources are good, more competition is good, but as a mediator or as an independent developer, you can wrap yourself around the axle pretty quickly, so to speak, doing all of these integrations. And the response times and all those things are just one element of it. It's ad quality. It's the ability. Oftentimes a newer ad network will come along with a customized unit and some outlandish promises about kind of what kind of eCPMs they'll be able to provide, and then the Chinese fire drill starts. You get the integration going, and did it deliver? Is it actually responding to it, or did it just go away in a week or so? So, I think I'm hearing a lot of kind of the way we looked at bringing in new demand sources, the way we evaluated them. The staying power. We had a tendency to sometimes overreach, to go too far for our developer partners, to find individual pockets of demand, whether that would be internationally. So, finding and integrating with tons of Asia Pac networks that, again, difficult to deal with from a payment perspective, difficult to deal with from a technical integration perspective, but pockets of value.
So I'll stop there real quick. I mean, any questions for the panel just on navigating the industry, how you go about evaluating who you're going to work with, how you measure them, along that thought?
Those are 3 good questions.
Just that
How
you know?
do you evaluate them
Yeah.
in advance?
Anybody want to jump in on like specific evaluation?
I have an evaluation that I run through, and so one of my first criteria is the ad server that I use, are they certified by my ad server? Because if the answer is yes, then it's an immediate integration. We can have them up and running in 5 minutes. If not, they go lower on my list. And then what are they bringing to the table? And if I look across my portfolio, where do I need help? And if they fulfill that need, then it moves up on my list.
How about team? Do you get into what type of support they're going to have, who your account manager is going to be, sort of vetting like who you're going to be working with? Go ahead, Mike.
Well, I don't know if we evaluate the team, but we'll pretty much test anybody, right? I mean, for us, I think one of the unique things about the weather category, right, WeatherBug, is we have big surges in our traffic, and those surges happen and they stop. So we try to fill with some good partners who aren't latent with their delivery, good quality brands. But if we start seeing that fall off, or we're not seeing the fill rate, we just start lowering them off. So
How are you measuring the quality of you're doing that continuously? I don't mean like latency quality, but
the quality of the advertisers.
Yes.
So we've got about 140 people that work at WeatherBug who constantly are on our apps, just checking things. I mean, that's not our quality control, but you'd be shocked how many times we get emails internally, or even the town I live in, everybody kind of knows where I work, and we have WeatherBug weather stations there. And we do get email from just everyday users. Our users are very passionate, so there's no true filter system that we use, but those are some of that's probably the best safeguard we have. I just give you a quick. We ran a interstitial that was supposed to be user initiated. It was auto initiated by accident by the network we work with, and in 45 minutes we had 25 user complaints. So just to give you an idea of
Instant feedback.
instant feedback, so we knew right away that something was wrong. So
We'll stay with Mike for a minute. So we've all been witness to this theme and the rise of programmatic in mobile. What can you tell us about the role of programmatic in your strategy and how you're using it?
So we are 100% focused on the strategy of programmatic. We've done a nice little, bridge with our online properties. The mobile side, 3 years ago, I took my sales team and we basically created a direct sales team, and then we, at that time I didn't run the remnant or the fill, and I took one of my sales guys who I thought understood the DR world the best and put him in charge of programmatic. And he has a team, it's himself and a gentleman from AdOps, and that's really how we're filling the gap. They test a lot, they look at different platforms. I don't think we've found a programmatic platform that really answers the questions like it has online. But again, it's all part of the testing. Like, I said before, we'll test pretty much anybody out there to see how they fill. And the two of those guys will watch it pretty much every day, all day, weekends, whatever. So, but from a programmatic standpoint, being 100% automated like the online side, I don't feel it's there yet. I don't think they feel it's there yet. So.
And Ben, you mentioned you work with a lot of different demand sources. How do you balance programmatic with sort of the direct mediated relationships that you've had for years? What's the mix that you look for?
Sorry, go
There's
ahead.
this bench. Ben Fair.
So, I think that the way that we're using it now is like just below direct sales. So, I know that a lot of folks have used it for remnant, but we found that it's been very effective, especially if you can, peg it in multiple places in the waterfall. And so we have, flexible control over the floors and the pricing there. So I think we've been able to make a great deal of use of that. And like I say, it sits pretty high in the queue these days, and allows them to take anything that makes sense for them and make the most money there. And it's been very effective for us.
Right. And then Brooke, your organization, I think is a different model, right? You've got a lot of different apps, and not only your own different apps, but you've got a portfolio of other apps that you're basically representing. Can you talk about how those strategies differ then, given that you're repping such different inventory in your portfolio?
Yeah, so my portfolio is across three main areas: third-party publishers, our own internally developed apps, and then Sprint branded apps. So those are going to be things like Sprint Visual Voicemail that we preload on Android devices. In terms of strategy, I think it goes back to, I really like profile all of our apps, how they perform against different categories, and then what type of ad units we have, and then if it's going to be video versus display, or maybe it's a combination of static and video units, and then really try to match up all of our ad networks and our TV partners in terms of where their strengths are and where their verticals are.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then we'll go to Ben. Just obviously Millennial making a big play today in programmatic. So and you see these developers trying to incorporate it, slot it in somewhere in their strategy. How do you see this playing out as programmatic continues to grow in the next few years?
Yeah, so I think today, clearly, there's still a tremendous amount of demand being kind of funneled through the traditional network channels. And if we're using the term programmatic kind of interchangeably with RTB, you'd like to see the networks providing a little more transparency, behaving a little bit more like they would in an exchange. In terms of understanding where the optimal place to plug them into your waterfall is, that requires not some bits of data science, but mostly rote data ingestion and being able to get that from the networks in a way that's easily that's transparent and easily digestible. So I think the next couple of years hopefully you'll start to see networks behaving a little bit more like programmatic bidders.
All right. I will go back to Mike, switch gears just a little bit. So you mentioned earlier, and we mentioned in your bio, that you have a significant online presence as well as a direct sales team, which not every developer here has. But I think as any developer's growing, it's challenges that they start to face. What lessons can you share from managing those competing demands that are tugging at you?
Yeah, so, at heart, I'm a sales guy, so I'm going to stick to the rule of sales, which is the KISS, right? Keep it simple. Being a weather app, it's 100%, we're a utility app, right? Or a utility product. So we know our mobile has grown extremely quickly compared to our online. In fact, our online is probably 20-25% of our overall traffic now. We're maybe like 300 million page views a month for online. But we've been in the mobile space I've been here over 9 years, and we've been in the mobile space since I got here. And I remember saying, why are we doing this? There's no money in it. But now I look back and I'm like, wow, we were so ahead of the curve because we put ourselves in a good position to grow. But I think, keeping it simple, and one of the things when mobile kind of started to blossom is everybody was charging $20, $30, $50, $60 CPMs. And, we didn't take that approach. We actually, when the tablets became the tablets in the space, when every IO that came in for online was tested on our tablet apps. So, because we ran 300 by 250s and 728 by 90s. And if it worked, we would go back to the client and say, we tested it, it worked well, can we move some of the money to the tablet? Same rates, same everything else, would you be willing? And we started to see our deals flow between online and mobile. So if I look back now and I look, a year ago or 2 years ago, and I look to the IOs that come in from my direct team, not every deal has online in it, and not every deal has mobile in it, but typically, probably at least 60% of the deals that flow in have an element of both. So, I would look at it as a way to cross-pollinate to your users, because you're not always going to have a big duplication between your online and mobile users. But
Any questions for Mike on that one? I think that's one that I would expect that people are constantly grappling with, sort of the managing a direct sales against your mediation, and also online and versus mobile. Back here.
One question when you mentioned on direct sales, I guess you do a lot around like rich media and so on. Do you also do the rich media for the mediation?
yes, so
And then
we don't.
What is your strategy? And the last one is, how do you deal with SDK integration?
So we work with, so the SDK issue is a huge issue. My CIO and I, that's probably the one thing we go back and forth on, because we have a lot of data. Our app is typically a little bit heavier than probably most of your apps, and that's because of the data that we pull into it. So we can't have that many SDKs. So we chose an ad line, a mobile ad serving partner who basically handles all of our SDKs. So once they certify them, they put them through. So we don't have to monitor too many SDKs. Before we went to this ad serving partner, it was a nightmare. I mean, a nightmare, because Android and iOS are very different, and they're very difficult. And depending on, we still have one rich media partner that we cannot run on Android because they can't get it. And they were our original rich media partner. So we only can run them on iOS. But since we went to this ad serving partner, it's been a lot easier. And I think you had a couple questions, but how do we manage between direct and, so the direct team has full right to sell native, rich media, targeting, whether geo or temperature, and all elements like that. We do limit our network partners from doing certain things and taking advantage of certain aspects that we do. We're kind of altering that a little now from an online perspective with private marketplace and RTB, but in the mobile space, we're still kind of putting our toes in the water, right? Because I don't want to lose business on the direct side, and I also want to make sure that our fill is, we have a lot of inventory that we need to fill, and the shift from a direct standpoint is not all the way over on the mobile side. And you talk about smartphone or tablet, right? So it is a delicate balance, but now we also have it where my direct team can drive sales and do larger deals, but part of that deal can actually be shifted over into our yield and our programmatic areas. So we're trying to, there's a whole I'm trying to think, it was called Dope, duplicate once, publish everywhere, and then it was also, you pay everybody, and that's kind of, I think, the only struggle a lot of publishers are facing now. Do you pay the direct team on the full deal, or you pay your programmatic yield guys on the other part of the deal? So I hope that answers.
Brooke, with your apps comes a sizable international footprint. What can you tell us about how what challenges do you have with the international inventory versus the U.S. inventory, and what tactics are you using specific to international?
So I have, for example, I have a ton of traffic in Indonesia for whatever reason. So that's where some of our ad network growth has come this year in partnerships, is finding those folks who specialize in Indonesian traffic or wherever the country is. So I think some of the challenges are lower CPMs, of course, and finding those companies that can help us really do well in those countries. We've also seen a lot of growth this year in Latin America.
Ben, end of the road, Ben. What strategies did you see on international through the Skyrocket platform?
Well, so as the Skyrocket platform, we were also, kind of a data provider, right? So we were helping a lot of our publishing partners understand kind of what type of traffic they had and what locales and where it was worth investing, either the the direct sales effort or the kind of the regional network integrations. Rovio is a big partner of ours. They have a pretty massive footprint in China. So had to go around and find some networks kind of off in the weeds a little bit, get those integrations done. But in terms of like kind of a go forward strategy, it's really just making sure that you can qualify the partner that you integrate with or the advertiser that you integrate with at the end of the day.
Ben Parrott, native. So we've heard native mentioned several times. Hot topic, right? Your app sets up well for native advertising. How are you incorporating it? It's new for all the companies that you probably work with, demand wise. Can you tell us like how that's unfolding for MocoSpace?
Sure. So I mean, it is new, but like our first exposure to this is kind of funny. It was like 4 or 5 years ago. Been doing this for quite a while, and we put an in-stream unit into. I don't know how we came up with it at the time, but we put this in-stream unit into our users' feed. And that was one of the most epic failures I've ever been involved with. The users hated it. They saw that as their space. And I don't know if Facebook has beaten that out of them or what, but they no longer feel that way. Fast forward to, say, a year and a half ago, we started to push into this area again and said, okay, let's give it another try. Now, no problems at all. It's neutral to the UX, I'd say. And the problem really has been sourcing demand. So say a year and a half ago when we first started this, there were very few, like everybody's excited about it, everybody's talking about it, like they still are, but we were having trouble getting people to buy it or give us inventory for it. That has really turned around in this calendar year and really just in the past couple quarters, where now we're definitely clearing more of it on the direct side, and we're getting a few network partners who are able to backfill it. So we had originally had all these plans for massive expansion of that in 2014, and had stayed with a couple units, and now we're just now starting to finish that expansion because there's enough demand to backfill it.
Yeah, and so I kind of go back to other Ben again on this. Like adversely with a product like this emerging, how would you have approached it? What you're trying to get it to the scale that it needs to get to?
I think, excuse me. I think we've done a poor job as an industry kind of congealing around standards, or at least we're slow to get there. If you take a look at the way kind of rich media evolved on mobile, we had the ORMA standard that kind of popped up and then went away, and then MRAID, and it was all implemented a little bit differently. I think, for our purposes, we wanted to support everything natively, like native ads natively, and then would go around and try and find, the right kind of partners to fill that in, making sure that we could cleanse the tags and kind of deliver them however they needed to be delivered within the publisher's app. But we never really kind of got all the way through that at Skyrocket. But that would have been the general strategy that we would have taken, and taking into account obviously, a lot of our publishers were what we'd call larger enterprise publishers, and so you have to kind of make sure that you're not creating channel conflict and or helping our publishers advertise their competitive apps. So, but yeah, generally we would kind of crash into the standard and hack through it until one emerged. And I try to take a leadership position in terms of establishing those standards.
All right, so we covered a lot of ground. We have 3 minutes left. I'm getting the signal. I'll leave it there and just sort of open it up to the floor. Diverse set of organizations here with a lot of different mediation and monetization challenges. What other questions do you guys have for them?
So when we talk about fragmented demand sources, it also comes with fragmented reporting. So I was wondering if you guys have any challenges in getting aggregated data using diversify your demand.
Who wants it?
Okay, so
Go ahead, Ben.
we So we, you know, basically will take the reporting from all those different places in kind of a painful fashion and combine it ourselves and then compare that to the data that we have. So we have our own ad server mediation layer that we built a long time ago and still use for most things. And so we basically compare their data to ours. But yeah, I'm not going to say that's an easy process. It is not.
I'd say it's definitely a challenge for us, and we have a data team that focuses on adjusting the data and then trying to normalize it across our partners.
Anyone else?
Everybody's doing those things internally. They've got all these ingestion engines. Nobody's partnered with. You talked about the ad serving partner who's kind of taking the SDK development heavy lifting off of your shoulders. Is anybody using a third-party provider to help aggregate, transform that data?
Not for us.
Interesting. I think so. Given the complexity and given I'm not sure that it's a core competency that any of you want to establish within your organizations. Obviously, it's mainline. This is your revenue, so I think that it's certainly very, very important. But I think that again, I think about publishing tools all day long. That one's a really powerful one, and one I think that it's great if you've got, again, the competency and the ability to do it internally, but I think it's also a great opportunity to partner. And once you have access to that data, you have access to that visibility, it becomes quite powerful.
I was just curious who you recommend. So as a former burst leader, we were spoiled by that aggregated data. Whether it always worked or not, that's another story, but it was
Our data was perfect, you know that.
almost perfect. I'm not finding anyone filling that gap. Well,
I'd like to recommend Nexage.
There you go, Heiser. No, I mean, I think there's a hole in the marketplace, and one I think that as an organization we're going to take very, very seriously and plug in.
Anyone else? Everyone's hungry? All right. Thank you very much.